Well, good evening, everyone. I am the person behind the curtain up in the corner that you can't see. Welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I have Nicholas Humphrey and Jennifer Hines tonight, and we are awaiting Antonio, who's getting his proverbial shit together. And I am going to hand this over to Jennifer. And Jen, take it away,
Yeah.
baby.
All right. Well, Nick, it's so great to see you. It actually wasn't too long ago that we had our last show together, and so much is going on. I really feel like since like June, things have really taken off in a giant way. I mean, I think there's a major departure from the average out of like who knows what standard deviation. It's cutting its own path. And I was wondering if you could talk with us about what your perceptions are about what's happening right now with abrupt climate change.
Yeah, yeah. So it's yeah, yeah. It's been something to watch. I mean, the oceans are running super hot right now. I mean, you have El Nino, the
Yes.
beginnings of El Nino, which would be by itself bad enough, but then you have so many hot spots, ocean heat waves
Hmm.
going on around the world from the
Did
most of
did
the
you
North
happen to
Atlantic basin.
did you happen to see that the ocean temperature off the tip of Florida, the most southern part of Florida, was 98 degrees yesterday? Did you see that
Yeah,
in the news? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. I saw that. I think
I
it
mean, I'm
actually. I
like
think.
98
I think.
degrees. This is like a
Yeah,
jacuzzi or something,
yeah,
you
yeah. I
know?
mean, it's. And it's driving. It's like a feedback. It's driving. The high heat and the air is driving the warm water temperatures, and then it's feeding back to the atmosphere again. So you're getting like record high heat indices in Miami, like 108, 110-degree heat index in Miami. I mean, it's been sweltering down there in South Florida. I feel sorry for those guys because
Mm,
they're
mm,
used to humidity down there in South Florida, but it's been pretty extreme even
mhm,
for their standards. But yeah, I mean
mhm.
the I mean you look all over the world. You look at much of the North Indian Ocean, the
Yeah.
Eastern Atlantic, the Sea of Japan, and all around Japan, the North Pacific. All these areas are just really are hot spots in the ocean right now. In addition to El Nino in the tropical Pacific, so I mean, there's been a lot going on with heat and and it's affecting sea ice. I mean, and it's actually not so much as much the Arctic sea ice for once. It's the Antarctic sea ice that's really low.
I've seen
I mean,
that. I've seen that. The Antarctic sea ice is like going away very, very quickly. And it's on also this trajectory that is completely out of the norm. Have you also seen that? How it's just completely different than all the other
yeah,
years?
yeah. I mean, it's dramatic. I mean, it's the polar night down there, so it is technically regrowing, but it's doing it very slowly and way below, way into record low territory. And in fact,
Hmm.
June 2023 was record low sea ice extent globally. So the global sea ice extent was in record territory for June 2023. And
Mm,
June 2023 was the hottest month, hottest June on record. Wasn't even close to the previous record, which was just last year, I
mm.
believe. Yeah, so I mean, it's the planet is running hot right now.
Yeah.
I mean, all these climate indicators you're used to tracking are all like they're all significantly deviated from all the other lines of reference from previous years. You know,
Hmm.
the global sea surface temperature, average sea surface temperature, is well above previous years. The global sea ice extent is really low. The Antarctic sea ice extent is really low.
Yeah.
And then you have other things going on too, like fires. The fires in Canada. I mean, I'm looking outside and we have all this smoke in the sky over Fargo, North Dakota, right now from the fires in Western Canada.
Mm.
And I mean, a couple months ago we had smoke from Eastern Canada drift westward over
Oh my
Fargo.
God.
Now we're getting the smoke from the West. So I mean, it's bad. Hey, Antonio.
Hi,
Hello,
Antonio.
my friends.
Good to see
Yeah,
you.
nice seeing you again. Yeah,
You
Hello,
guys as well.
Antonio. It's great to see you.
It's nice to see you, this little small
Yes.
camera.
I'm Oz tonight behind the curtain. Behind
She's
the
kind of
curtain.
like Jiminy Cricket, you know. Let your Yeah,
You know
like
what?
let your conscience.
She is on my right shoulder,
Oh
or at
my
least from my
goodness.
screen.
So
Right?
cute.
All right. Well, I'm just trying to adjust your color. You're a little different. One of these things is not like the other tonight, and it's you, Antonio.
Mhm. Right.
Oh,
One of these
welcome.
Well,
things is not like the other
you
one.
didn't miss much, Antonio. I was just talking about the world being on fire. So I mean,
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, it's not. I mean, it's horrible.
literally and figuratively. So yes,
This is a hot
yes,
show. Hot show. All right. I'm muting myself. Goodbye.
yes. But
All
yes,
right.
so
All
yeah,
right.
basically the world is on fire. I mean, that's
Well,
basically what you could put into
tis.
a nutshell. Is yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's very, very warm. And I mean, this is really the non-linear nature of climate change impacts. You get these rises in temperature that are occurring, these global average temperatures, but I mean, what's happening is you get non-linear changes in the impacts as a result of those rises in temperature. So, I mean, now you're getting just catastrophic fires throughout Canada, parts of Russia too,
Mm.
Siberia, and then you're getting all the smoke. You're getting all the marine heat waves, and I mean, we got to think about the coral reefs. I mean, the coral reefs are almost extinct in Florida,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so
I mean, the
yeah,
oceans were like 98 degrees Fahrenheit at the tip of Florida the other day. Coral reefs can't live through that. No
no,
way.
yeah. I mean, I I believe their comfort level in terms of sea surface temperatures is like mid 70s to maybe mid 80s. Once you start getting above like 84, 85 degrees, and it starts to become stressful. Heat stress induces in the coral, and then yeah, 90s. I mean, how do you can't even think of that? I mean, it's like a hot tub.
Mm.
So
Just
yeah,
unbelievable.
I think I want to
yeah.
chime in with an anecdote here since you're talking about hot bath water in the Gulf and the ocean. Well, I know this community knows, or at least Jennifer and Nick know, that I'm recently back from El Salvador, and that was an experience directly with wet bulb temperatures.
Mm.
Actually, I told Sandy in this experience that actually after I went home and I thought about how close to the edge I was, I realized that actually I most I certainly would have actually died on my vacation if I didn't have access to um,
Oh
air
my God.
conditioning.
Yeah.
It was actually that bad. I mean, I did have access to air conditioning, but even then, I actually did succumb to heat, sickness, fatigue, and exhaustion. The symptoms, it was very difficult at first to necessarily tell what was going on because, you're hot, you're sweating, and those are not necessarily abnormal things for you to necessarily feel when it's hot and humid outside. Um, but the first day I was okay. Day two, I started to notice when I was outside, I was sweating profusely. That is, I could not stop sweating. And that seems kind of funny at first, right? Because your clothes are soaked, your body is soaked, but you don't realize the danger that your body is in. When you sweat like that, you are losing an extraordinary amount of electrolytes, of water, fluids from your body. And because the water was, in El Salvador, doesn't have the same type of filtration and safety standards and sanitation standards as the US, I didn't have access to any tap water. All the water that I drank, I had to buy, and that was between $2 and $5 a bottle. And the bottles were just like the little small ones that you might find at the gas station. Um,
Wow.
so
That's
actually,
amazing.
by day three, I was in a situation that although I was drinking what I thought was quite regularly, I was severely underestimating how much liquids I needed. And I remember the first time that I knew I was in trouble was my urine was as dark as I've ever seen it. Um, and
Oh yeah,
I realized
that's a bad
I was in trouble because I could not drink unless I was going to commit to staying inside my hotel room the entire day. And now my hotel wasn't like a hotel here in the United States where there's a big hallway and there's a lot of rooms on both sides. And it's literally just a room, and then I'm immediately outside. And it's just my bedroom and a bathroom. So unless I committed myself to staying in that room for the rest of my vacation, I was not going to be able to sufficiently hydrate myself.
Oh my God.
I ended up losing my appetite, not being able to eat. And then actually one of my friends, who was another American, but who had been there much longer than me, she was explaining that actually when she first got there, she had a similar situation. And she told me, once you lose your appetite, it becomes really dangerous. She said in her situation, her friends were still trying to get her to eat because she hasn't eaten anything in a long time. And then after she did eat a little bit, she ended up passing out.
Oh my God.
Um, so that was, I mean,
Wow.
that's the danger. I mean, when Nick is talking about the comfortability of those coral reefs, I guess they just happen to have the same, their water temperature comfortability just happens to be my air temperature comfortability. And, so when you're talking about 90 degrees, and I was looking at my phone, it was 90 degrees almost every day. And the average humidity, I don't think I ever saw it drop lower than 88%.
Oh boy.
Um,
That's
and
pretty damn muggy.
and the nighttime temperature, the lowest I saw it after it thunderstormed real bad was 77. That was the lowest nighttime temperature. And that's why I concluded that actually I probably, without air conditioning, would have died on day 2 or 3, because the nighttime temperatures are so hot that my body wouldn't have had any chance to cool down during the night. Um, and so that's when I realized, my God, I mean, really, I mean, heat related stress and illness and death fatality is incredibly serious.
It's
I'm
real.
30 years old. Um, and of course I was smart, right? Like I wasn't out in the middle of the day when the sun was beating down on you most, but it really just didn't matter
Mhm.
what time of the day I was out. Anytime I was outside for more than 10
Yeah.
minutes, I was profusely sweating.
That is rough, man. Well, welcome
Yeah.
back.
Well, talk about getting back, because the day that I got back in the
Oh,
United States, the air temperature was a reprieve from the heat, but for the first time in my life, I was greeted by Canadian wildfire
oh my
the day that I
God.
got back, with some of the worst air quality that I saw in North Carolina since I've been living here.
God.
Uh, so it was a very interesting just commotion of events.
Mm, unbelievable. Well, I'm glad you
Yeah.
didn't sustain any
Yeah.
damage.
Yeah, just thinking about heat stress. I went on a kind of a vacation of my own, I suppose, but it was sort of business, I guess. It
Mhm.
was to the Natural Hazards Workshop in Bloomfield, Colorado. I did that earlier this week, and I actually just got back Wednesday night. And one of the things that was discussed by some of the panels was the issue of heat stress and trying to warn for heat and protect people from the heat. And there was um, there was a panel done by involving an emergency management professional who worked for Portland, Oregon, emergency management agency, and their public housing authority was there. Two representatives from their public housing authority, and they talked about a study they did where they um, looked at heat in the public housing units, and they looked at it because several people in their public housing units were fatalities during the 2021 June 2021 heat wave, where you had heat up to like 117 in Portland metro area. So there were deaths, and there was several of what ended up being nearly 70 fatalities in Multnomah County, Oregon, and they they did a study where they put in, with the permission of the renters, put in temperature sensors in the homes in these people's homes, and they found during more routine heat waves of June, July, August 2022, summer 2022, they had temperatures in some of those units going up in excess of 90 degrees. Like the highest they measured was like 95 degrees in someone's home, and it went above 80, 85 fairly frequently. And so, and people in surveys said that they experienced the symptoms of heat exhaustion, like difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, difficulty eating, having an appetite, excessive sweating, all of these things that you see with heat stress. And, so it was very eye opening to them because for years people had complained it's hot in these units. It gets hot, really hot, but nobody actually bothered to study what actually is going on and get the data for what was actually happening in those units. And then they end up hiring a sociologist to actually do this study, and they measure these temperatures and talk to the people, and they saw that people were really suffering um, in those units. So now they're trying to do things to try to install more air conditioners and do other things like planting more trees and things like that to try to reduce the heat around these buildings. And some of these are
Mhm.
like high-rise buildings where the heat really builds up in those buildings. But yeah, I mean, um, the thing with like the National Weather Service, they issue these heat warnings. These heat warnings assume or are designed for extreme heat outside, but the heat inside can get extreme before it gets extreme outside, and it can linger into the night.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
Um, so you need some way to need a better way to try to alert people and tell people about the effects of extreme heat, especially in the nighttime in those units. And like cooling centers, they would be open during the day, but they wouldn't be open during the night when people might actually need them. So I mean, yeah, I mean it was very
Yeah.
enlightening. But yeah, I mean, I was talking to this EM person out of Portland after the panel, and I was like, it's going to get a lot worse with global warming. I mean, global warming is going to really make it so much worse in Portland, where you get those kind of heat waves every other year, every couple of years. And she
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, yeah." I mean, there wasn't a lot of optimism when it came to discussing the effects of climate change on natural hazards
Well,
at
I'm
this
just gonna say,
conference. I
Nick,
noticed.
you saw, Nick, I'm sure you saw. First of all, I'm sure you're more than aware of the statistics in 2003 when we had the 2003 heat wave in Europe. 30,000 people died as a result of that, and I
Mhm.
suspect it's, because many of these Europeans lived in homes not too dissimilar from some of these lower income housing in the United States, in the sense that they weren't necessarily built with air conditioners. And so a lot of people were exposed because, again, that's not the
Mhm.
sort of climate that they were used to. But I
Yeah.
don't know if you saw, and someone commented, and I'll hand it over to Jen here, but someone commented just a second ago, updating us that in 2022, over 60,000 people had died in Europe, across Europe, due to the heat wave.
Ah, that's
Yeah, I
just
saw that news story too.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God. So
yeah.
it's
I mean,
really
and that's
starting
the
to hit home. I mean, this year is not like the
mm,
other years. I can say that personally with full confidence. It is a weird year here. I mean, the other thing kind of happened with us, just the way the jet stream was and how this is right by the Rocky Mountains. The jet stream from the Arctic often gets pulled down, by the Rocky Mountains. And what happened here was this big ball of cold air was here for like months because it was just kind of stuck here, and it brought all this rain with it. It was the weirdest June I've ever seen, and May, to be honest. And this year is different. We're seeing extreme heat, extreme fires, extreme floods, crazy things like those pictures out of where were those pic? Was that out of Spain, Sandy, that you showed us last week with the road just full of
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, and
I mean, it
I
was
have the video
water.
still, but
Oh my God. Well, if you can pull it up, it actually would be worth showing again
all
because
right,
it's
I'll
a good
work on it while you
example.
guys talk.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
example of what abrupt climate change looks like. It's just shocking. And
Well,
even in
y'all.
this
I mean,
video, you
y'all.
can see like people being
Yeah.
swept away, in this water.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of you saw the video out of Vermont and parts of New England. They got like half a foot of rain or 10 inches of rain in like within like 48 hours or something, and these horrible floods in parts of Vermont. And I saw some video the other day of horrible monsoon flooding out of India too.
Mhm.
Just huge walls of water going through towns in India and parts of India. So I mean, there's like the the nonlinear effects of climate change are really showing themselves now. I mean, you're really seeing it as being different from what it was in recent years. And I mean, yeah, 2023 really is shaping up to be different, and I mean, it could end up being the hottest year on record. There's a possibility of
Mhm.
that. It could end up being the hottest year on record. If not this year, then certainly next year, because El Nino will be at its full grip by this winter and early spring next year. So we
Yeah.
could either see 2023 or 2024 being the hottest year on record easily. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. This is kind of the meaning of the exponential function, just in case somebody can't quite understand what exponential means when you finally get liftoff. It means that things are nonlinear, they change quickly, and they change more the current year than they changed the previous year. And that's what we're starting to see also, although it's slower with sea level rise. And I know, guys, we were taking a look at this particular article from Yale Climate Connections. How fast are the seas rising? Because as we know, global sea level has risen 6.7 inches, which is 170 millimeters over the past 100 years. And of rise has doubled since the 20th century. So this is pretty interesting. There are a lot of really good graphs in this and good maps about, like, there's one, maybe Sandy, let me see what you're showing here.
Kind of stay
I,
on
I
this.
guess I guess I should go along with you, Sandy, because you've got the slideshow, so I'll let you drive.
I just changed it. I'm not driving it.
Oh, okay.
I just changed it to put it on the
Is
different
there a graph
screen.
on there with sea level rise? Because I think Jennifer was talking about sea level rise.
Yeah, actually, there's one in this article, the Yale Climate Connections, How
Mm-hmm.
Fast Are the Seas Rising? And it's called Gridded Regional Sea Level Trends. And it's really fascinating because what you can see is that the sea level does not rise the same all over the globe. Like in some areas, it rises a lot more than in other areas. And in some areas, it's kind of going down a little bit. And what I notice is that the places that it's kind of going down a little bit are the places where there's all that sea ice melt in Antarctica, and it's cooling it so much
Mm-hmm.
because cold water is like less big than hot water. So it's actually decreasing the sea level around Antarctica due to the temperature of all that melted ice water. It's kind of
Well,
fast.
there's
Mm-hmm.
this one from today, and
Ooh.
I don't. This one just subtropical storm Don forms in the remote Atlantic. That's from today, but I'm looking for the one that you
Oh, it
were.
was the Yale. It
How
was the
fast are
Yale.
the seas rising?
Yeah,
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
wanted
one.
to ask Jennifer, and maybe the graph will help illuminate this a little bit, but I know recently there was a study that was pretty damning in its implications. It was saying that a lot of the problems with the sea level rise projections and the implication of those projections that we've had in previous studies was due to the fact that a lot of these satellite toptometry was getting the top of roofs and trees. And so, in fact, what they found was that the elevation of land was, in many
Ah,
cases, 30 to 40 feet higher than it ought to be because it was capturing in the tops of trees and buildings.
oh,
Yeah, I think I
well,
heard about that
maybe that's
too.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I heard
But,
about
but
that too. I think it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe they can correct for that. But the East Coast is a really interesting example, guys, right? Because like at least past Cape Hatteras, right, over in North Carolina, and then down the entire East Coast, and you live right there, Antonio, and all the way down to Florida and around Florida, there is like these barrier islands. But I think
Hmm.
that's what the old coast used to be, because after the end of the last ice age, the seas rose 430 feet or approximately thereof, right? So
Mhm.
that's when all that ice melted and the seas rose. And I think that the barrier islands there on the East Coast are probably the remnants of the old coastline before the seas came in, because
At
everything looks very inundated, doesn't it?
at 1 additional foot of sea level from today's level, the entire coastal plains of North Carolina is lost, which is an absolute enormous amount of eastern North Carolina. Which, right now it is mostly more swampland and, as you said, island chains and things of that nature. But
Mhm.
it is land, and literally millions of people live on that side of the state. Um,
Right.
and with just 1 additional foot, the devastation is actually quite Herculean on the North Carolinian
Yeah,
coast. So,
yeah, and
Yeah.
we have to consider the possibility, and I know James Hansen has talked about it. It hasn't really gained, unfortunately, much traction with the climate science community. At least it deals with climate models. But I think a lot of glaciologists might agree with Hansen. The non potential non-linearity of sea level rise, where you could have sea level rise, go exponential um, in the middle to the end of the century, where you get huge amounts of rise that come on very quickly, and it would manifest in terms of bigger storm surges, high tide, just high tides would flood enormous amounts of land, and it would force people to have to migrate away from the coast because they just can't live in that environment anymore. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
and then of course we can't also forget the fact that as oceans hit record temperatures, thermal expansion of the ocean is one of the contributing factors to sea level
Mm-hmm.
rise. And these are, of course, some of the hottest oceans that we observe now in over 3 million years.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. And of course, as the temperature goes up, so does the amount of water in the air. I think it goes up for every degree, it goes up 7%, if I'm not mistaken. So there's going to be more and more water carried in the air. It's going to be hotter and there's going to be more energy. Plus, the hotter seas are going to raise the sea level as well as the melting ice. So this whole thing is just starting to really get traction and take off. And I can remember Paul Beckwith some years ago, I think, he made this, which seemed an incredibly wild prediction at the time, that the sea levels would rise by 7 meters, which, if I'm not mistaken, is whereabouts 28 or 30 feet, right? By the year, what did he say? I think he said 2070
Wasn't
or
it like
something like that.
2070? Yeah. Yeah, I remember
Wasn't
that.
it? And people,
Yeah.
it was so controversial, and it hit. It's like, oh my God, he blah, 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 caused a lot of commotion. But sea level, like everything else, is exponential. And in the beginning, it seems very like not too much is happening, then you start to get a little bit of liftoff. But it's not like there's going to be less sea level rise next year, right? There's
Yeah.
not. There's going to be more. So every year that we are alive, it's going to rise more than the year before. And that's just a
Yeah.
fact. And we're just getting all that traction now in Antarctica. What's that going to do? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's all the non-linear, like, fracturing, melting, and of the Greenland ice sheet, parts of the Antarctic ice sheet, that would drive a nonlinear rise in sea level. I mean, the glaciologists. I mean, I can't remember any names, but I know there have been glaciologists, even in documentaries, that have said, "Oh, the climate models, they don't account for what we see on the ground." You know, I mean, there's just things that
Mm-hmm.
scientists that are field scientists see on the ground that can't be explicitly calculated or accounted for by the climate models. This is the reality. I mean, the sea ice melting in the Arctic, that's happening much faster than climate models initially anticipated. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are going on the ground, in terms of everything from ice to ecology that's non-linearly occurring that just can't be accounted for. That you have to account for, qualitatively, even if you can't explicitly throw it in a climate model quantitatively that tells you that things are going to be non-linearly accelerating
Mm-hmm.
as the temperatures steadily rise. And so, I mean, that's just the reality of the situation.
Can I interject? Jennifer, would you like to see the videos from Spain that
Oh, yeah,
were so
please. This is a good
awful?
example of abrupt climate change. And
I'm pulling them right up just
okay.
from Twitter.
Oh,
So let's see if we can hear them.
Oh wow.
My God.
Yeah, that looks just like what I just saw in India yesterday. I mean, it's just the same kind of like flash flood. Yeah, it's bad.
Oh,
I
there's
mean, this
more.
is in Spain. I mean,
Yeah,
Spain is a
there's
Yeah,
more.
arid
what
region.
the
There's
heck? Oh
more.
my God. Look at them holding on to the trees.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there's more. I mean,
My,
it's in Vermont's insane. The pictures that were in Vermont, my
yeah,
God! And like I said, I was in Montpelier with Sam in October visiting his sister. Unreal. I have the pictures.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, it was very disturbing. Let's see. What else do we have here? Um, yeah, I mean, oh, check this one.
Oh
This is a
my
bad one.
oh
gosh.
my God.
Yeah, just
Oh
stuck
The
in there.
my.
tree.
Stuck
Oh,
in there.
holy cow.
Oh
Yep.
wow.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
Oh wow. My goodness.
yeah.
Oh
Oh,
man.
we
I
can't forget
mean,
India. Oh my gosh, what's going on there is insane.
yeah,
God.
I didn't pull anything up from India, but I suppose I could while you guys continue talking. And
Uh,
Jennifer, let me know when you want to run the slideshow. There's
oh
look at
yeah,
this.
let's go
yeah.
for it.
I
I think
mean,
this is a good
I was just
segue,
gonna,
you
I was
know.
just, yeah, I was just gonna add. I mean, the whole issue with these heavy rain events. I mean, it's just gonna get dramatically worse, as Jennifer said, because of more moisture in the atmosphere. The storms themselves will become taller because of more thermal energy, convective energy. Um, they'll hold more moisture, dump more heavy rain abruptly on places. I mean, there'll be a lot more weather whiplash in some places between very dry and very wet, like Spain. I mean, Spain has been dealing with a lot of
Yeah.
drought and heat, and so you get these big convective storms, and then you get flash floods from them. So, yeah,
And Nick, I was just going to say, adding on to that, is you get this weather whiplashing, but it's I think about it as like a tug of war, because as temperatures get hotter, the heat in the atmosphere just sucks the moisture out of the ground, and then the ground is
Yeah,
left more barren, it's left more rigid, it's more coarse, it's harder, and then you get these storms running in, and of course now the ground is completely unable to absorb any of that moisture.
yeah,
And so,
yeah, exactly.
I'm looking at this picture in Spain, and the idea I have my Spain is an arid region, and it's a river. Uh,
Yeah,
like my God.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the danger. I mean, that my worst case scenario for like agricultural areas, like the Great Plains of the U.S. or parts of China or Europe, these agricultural breadbaskets is this. Basically they get hit with extreme drought, and I mean, there's extreme drought going on in parts of Nebraska and Kansas right now. But then you get these these pulses of heavy rain, and the water in the ground can't absorb them because it's become so hard and brittle, and you get these huge flash floods, and you can't grow anything because it's like either feast or famine. You either get no water, or you get too much water. How are you gonna grow your crops? So
Yeah.
that's yeah,
So, Sandy, let's go. What do we have here? Climate seems headed for a new frontier not seen in more than a million years. Look for continual monthly records driven by current extreme planetary energy imbalance. Ugh,
yeah,
wise man. Heading toward 3 to 4C this century. Kevin Anderson. I like Kevin Anderson.
I'll read it.
yeah. So do
We
I.
are heading towards 3 to 4C of warming across this century, an absolute climate catastrophe for all species, including our own. And all we are doing so far is giving rhetoric and optimism and greenwashing. Now, there's something for you guys to talk
Yeah,
about. Dig into.
Well,
Uh,
I was just going to say there was a
yeah,
big story about Obama and his incrementalism. He was talking about with, I think, some guy named, I can't remember the interviewer's name, but Obama was reflecting on a moment he had with his eldest daughter. And his eldest daughter comes up to him and says, "Me and my friends are horrifically pessimistic about um, the climate in our future." And Obama kind of responds and says, "Well, honey," and I'm kind of summating his response, but he says, um, yeah, we are going to, I'm going to be honest, we are going to miss 1.5. And we're probably going to miss 2. But if we work really hard, we can get 2.5, 3. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm like, this is the
that's like
moment.
climate apocalypse right there. I mean, that's climate apocalypse.
And it
yeah,
is
but
a
the thing
tacit
is, it's
admission.
going to be more than that. I mean, we'd be lucky to get 3 at this point, the way things are going.
But it is the
Yeah,
first tacit admission by a former, a recent former head of state of a major industrial society that we are going beyond catastrophic this century in climate. I mean, what Obama said, his tacit admission, is essentially no different than what Kevin Anderson is saying here. And I mean, Obama was being nice to his daughter, right? Two and a
Yeah,
half, 3. And that's if
yeah,
we work really hard, is what he says, which of course we're not working really hard.
no,
Which is what Kevin Anderson is saying. We have a bunch of rhetorical rhetoric about optimism and greenwashing, but we really haven't moved on this issue, and now I think it is starting to settle in. We're going to go way beyond dangerous with this one. And what you were saying earlier, Jennifer, about sea level. What's interesting
yeah,
about sea level that's different from aggravations in the atmosphere is that if we had our back against the wall and a gun pointed to our head, so to speak, uh, on the climate issue, we could use geoengineering as an immediate last case response. There is no treatment, so to speak, for sea level rise. Whatever amount of sea level rise you lock in is the sea level rise you get. And there is no way to delay or slow that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, it
Yeah.
isn't. And I think just a lot of this stuff has not hit home. Maybe it's starting to hit home. I don't know. What do you guys think? But I mean, Florida's going underwater. You know, New Orleans is going underwater. It's not going to be that far in the distant future. I mean, what did those people in Florida think about? Do they think about this? They're all living by the coast there. What do you think?
Well, I mean, me, I don't see any sign in the I don't see any sign in the social or economic state that shows any like realization of what's happening. I mean, they're still building stuff. They're
Well,
still
Nick,
building.
if I
Yeah.
can only disagree with you
I
here, just
mean,
because you mentioned that point,
okay.
I think the opposite is true, right? Now, there is a sort of what I call social retardation that has occurred and that is occurring. But for the
Mhm.
people who are pushing pencils in insurance offices and consulting
Mhm.
Oh
firms,
yeah.
wealth management
Yeah,
and
that's
investing
true.
firms, it is
Yeah.
very well. I mean, insurance companies are getting the heck out of Dodge when it comes to states, not just
Yeah.
like Florida, but across the union on different issues. If it's California, is the fire issue. Insurance companies are saying we're not going to insure in California because of the fire risk. In the state of California, I mean, the state of Florida, they're saying they're not going to insure because of hurricane and flood risk. Or if we are
Right.
going to insure,
Yeah.
you're going to have to pay at a premium. People's flood insurance has increased four, five, six, almost 10 times in some areas in Florida. So the signs, and those were the first perturbations in a society like ours that we're going to start to see because insurances
Yeah.
deal with risk. That's the only thing insurance is about is how to mitigate, how to deal with, and how to respond to risk. And climate change is going to show up, in our society for people who don't care about nature or the animals or all the other species or the other things that we talked about. It's going to show up as a series of risk, and then it's going to become, of
Mhm.
course, unmanageable risk. And the way that we're going to start to see that is that ultimately it's going to show up to many people as stranded assets, that the assets that they put their lives and souls into are no longer valuable because they are now under a risk model that didn't exist in the previous climate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And as the crisis worsens, the denial in some groups and the polarization of the political parties gets more and more extreme. And you have to keep doubling down on your beliefs. And it's not fact based. I would say it's alternative facts, and it's a very scary thing. And, Ron DeSantis doesn't even believe in climate change. Is he crazy? I mean,
Well, Jennifer, are
that's
you sure the
nuts,
fires
right?
in Canada aren't due to gay marriage?
And yeah, energy
Oh
directed.
my god.
Energy directed.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
I just wanted to mention, going to this, it was, it was interesting because the head of the Natural Hazards Center out of University of Colorado Boulder, she gave a
Mm.
speech to close out the workshop and stuff, and it was taken aback because she was talking about our our ability to deal with disasters and whether and our ability to ultimately um, be successful against disasters and survive them. And she said, "If we make it, if we make it." And I was just
Hmm.
like, "Wow!" I don't know if people in this audience really like understood what she was saying because it's like,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
like, I could tell that maybe they do because I could kind of tell just having conversations with other EM professionals, scientists, in between sessions and stuff. You go into conversations, you have dinner together. That there's a lot of optimism there about climate change and the effects it has on the ability to respond, recover, mitigate, and prepare for hazard events. And we know that the we all everyone that's there is quite aware that these hazard events are going to get more frequent or more intense because of climate change, the meteorological hazards, the tornadoes, the hurricanes, all this stuff that folks deal with. And one of the interesting things about the workshop was that there was a panel discussion between multiple, like four um, city emergency managers from, I believe it was Denver, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and one other big city I can't remember. And their issues were not just about like dealing with traditional disaster events like the tornadoes or the earthquakes in LA or things like that. It's dealing with what I was thinking privately was basically societal collapse. It was dealing with
Mhm.
things like increasing homelessness. They're being called upon to deal with homeless camps and increasing problems with homelessness. Um, they're being called upon to deal with some more civil unrest issues, threats, terroristic threats, and civil unrest by racists and far right, groups and stuff. They're getting called upon to deal with more violence in the cities and stuff like that than they've dealt with in the past. And it's just like all of these societal issues. And we talk about climate change a lot. We talk about the numbers and all the natural unnatural stuff going on because of human induced global warming. But there's also this civilization problem where civilization is being clearly put under a lot of stress, and it's being manifesting in all these. What one of the emergency managers said was basically social crises that they're being called upon to deal with, and they don't know how to deal with these problems. Like one of the politicians, one of the cities, a politician went and complained to the emergency manager, "Why aren't you fixing these problems?" And I was like, "You're the politician; it's your job. It's not my job to fix societal root cause problems in society.
Mm.
I don't have the power or the authority to do that." So I think there's a lot going on that it's not just about climate change, but society basically becoming more divisive and degrading over time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I thought I'd
And
bring that up.
I kind of want to segue on what you just said. And it's kind of like when you go out in public and talk about this, you can get challenged to basically come up with a solution. It's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, well, I'm just telling you what's happening, but what are you going to do about it? It's almost like you have responsibility to do something about it if you have the awareness that it's going on or something. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I've gotten
although
that
it's
type
it's
of. Go
yeah,
ahead, Nick.
yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say I got that type of talk from my college professors. I remember when I would bring this to their attention. That's the type of crowd that would often respond to me. Well, what are you going to do about it? Kind of like empowering the student to take, be large and be in charge
Yeah,
on the issue of climate change.
yeah,
Which, I understand that from that point of view. But in my day to day life, and I don't know if it's because I'm in the South, I do see a range of different responses. And the responses that scare me the most are that people interpret these events biblically as a sign of the end of the world. And it's very interesting because a lot of people, for example, who do tend to hold this view, don't necessarily believe in climate change. but they recognize all these climate, well, that's not how they would call them, but they call them weather related disasters are happening. And for them, that's evidence that, God is angry at us, that this must be getting close to when Jesus is coming. And that really scares me, because it's just like, we've been, at least the educated community, and the rational community, has been trying to articulate what's happening in our climate for publicly. The IPCC report came out in 1990, the first one, for over 30 years now. And there's just some communities, even in the industrialized United States, where this type of information just has not penetrated, that sort of mindset. And my fear is somebody who, comes from a background of just studying, the collapse of civilization. The idea that groups of people would retreat to cults or into magical thinking or into, extreme ideologies is not at all aloof or amiss to me. It's almost a guaranteed certainty. And as people wrestle with these, happenings increasingly in their lives and in their communities and around the world, they're going to need a framework to understand them. They're going to need a framework to interpret them. And usually that's not going to be in a governmental panel on climate change AR5 assessment. It's going to be what they have, right there in the nightstand, the Holy Bible.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. I mean, it's going to be the frame, how they frame it, and how they framed stuff their whole lives. It's going to be how they frame these series of events. I remember a panel discussion at the workshop where they were talking about working with communities for like mitigation for hazardous weather events and stuff in Colorado, and the state, and it was like a representative from the state of Colorado working with different counties in Colorado, and she said we can't, there's some places, some communities, we can't talk about climate change. We don't talk about it as climate change. We talk about it. We talk about weather events. It's
Mhm.
like, because it's like a purple state. You can talk about
Oh
climate
yeah.
change in Denver and Boulder, but you ain't gonna talk about it in rural eastern Colorado.
They might pull a gun on you or something, God
Yeah,
knows.
yeah. I mean, that's how they frame it differently. They may see, everybody might be agreeing that something is going on, but when you bring up climate change, it's been so heavily politicized now
That's right.
that, yeah, and you're and as Antonio said, it's um, religiousized, I guess you could say too. You know that now you can't talk to the same, to people in the same way. You have to consider the cultural nature of who you're dealing with in these discussions, and to try to push forward and at least talk about, okay, we can do these particular mitigation measures to try to help your community deal with the next flood or deal with the next drought, or something like that. But because that's the goal, is to reduce risk, the best that we can. But you can't always talk about the actual science with everybody, because it's either going to go over people's heads, or they're going to be hostile about it, or they're going to frame it as it's God. It's an act of God, not an act of nature, even, let alone an act of humanity that's driving it. So,
And this
Yeah.
really quickly kind of reminds me of, somebody made a
We're flushing
comment
that one.
that we can't get past, the influence of Enron. And this reminds me, this whole climate dilemma we're in, to Ocean Gate, right? There was a situation there where, the CEO was told by, I think he said 3 dozen different experts told him that if he attempted, 4,000, feet, that it would end catastrophically for the craft. First of all, you
yeah.
have to have, testicles made of steel to hear 36 individual different experts tell you that this was going to end your life, and you still did this. But just this idea that I think, I almost feel like the sense that policymakers have is that we'll take care of the climate when we get there. We'll cross the climate bridge when we get there. And I don't think there's this understanding that it's not like World War II. It's not like fighting the Nazis or beating the foe. Um,
Mm,
we're changing our climate for hundreds of, even if we stop today,
I know.
our climate would literally change for hundreds of thousands of years into the Earth's future.
It would. It absolutely would. It's so much worse than most people can possibly even conceive. And we who
Yeah.
look at this thing day in and day out for God knows what reason can really see that this is why do we do it, guys? Why do we do it? And in fact, Sandy, let's take a look at some of these graphs here. Why don't we progress to the next slide and see what you've got for us here?
Yeah. Let's see.
A lot of red.
Seasonal forecast. Yeah, seasonal forecast for looks like October, November, December 2023 temperatures. Yeah, a lot of red. Yeah, yeah,
So is
yeah. The
this an
North Atlantic.
anomaly? Is this an
Yeah, I think
anomaly
it's
map?
no,
It
it's
must be
a,
an anomaly map.
percentile.
Oh, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's like yeah, it's like percentile above normal. I think
Okay, it is anomaly
so.
map.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, basically,
At
yeah,
2 meters. So basically it's, six at head level.
Holy.
Yeah. So this is basically how far out it is from the norm as compared to whatever it was compared to. So it's
yeah,
interesting. We see these puddles of coolness kind of drifting off the tail of West Antarctica there. It's kind of interesting. It's sort of coloring that whole region, painting it sort of that blue color. I'm kind of surprised that we
yeah,
don't see that same thing over, to the south of Greenland. But then this isn't a water temperature map, so probably,
yeah,
yeah,
Oh yeah,
interesting.
right, right. It isn't water.
It's not.
yeah. Air
It's
temperature.
air
Yeah,
temperature.
Because I was about to say, Jen, you can kind of tell over Nova Scotia, over that area, there is obviously a temperature gradient change, but like you said, it would be more drastic if it was on water temperature.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But,
Mhm.
it's clear that everything is a lot hotter than it used to be. Anybody can see that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's going to be a very hot year. Can't get
Yeah.
away from that. Yeah,
Well, this is June 2023, the anomalies versus the
yeah,
average of between 1951 and 1980. So that 30-year average that ended 43 years ago. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So if you wanted to get like the 1880 baseline, what you'd have to tag on zero point 0.2 degrees to that. So that should be like one.
Yeah, it's close to. I've done it. I provided this one to Sandy because includes the Arctic and Antarctic temperatures because the data doesn't go as far back as 1880 very well for the Arctic and Antarctic in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
NASA's data set. But yeah, it was close to about 1.3, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was close to 1.3 for 1881 to like 1910, 1920. So yeah,
Yeah. Look
yeah,
at
but
East look at West Antarctica there. It's like so hot
hmm
compared to how it used to be. Wow.
yeah,
Amazing.
and a lot of that might have to do with the loss of or might be contributing to some of the sea ice loss or the slow recovery of the sea ice. It's growing, but it's growing very slowly in Antarctica right now. It's record lows in Antarctica,
Hmm.
and then yeah, it was
Wow.
relatively mild in the parts of the East Coast compared to everywhere else in the U.S. But
Temperature
yeah, this one I
anomaly.
can explain. Yeah, this one I can explain. This was from James Hansen. He has like a report that he does. I mean, he's retired now, but he does his own little reports where he talks about global climate change, and he estimated this that we might be in a period of accelerated warming since like the 2010s now, and we might be
Wow.
going to accelerated warming from the old era, which has been since 1980, 1970, 1980. We were warming at a pretty steady rate. Now we might be steepening that slope more since the 2010s, going into the
Yeah.
2020s now. So yeah, accelerated
Wow.
warming. That's his
Yeah.
estimation. Yeah,
Look at that. It's like 2.4 degrees C above baseline if you go back to the
yeah,
1880 baseline by 2040.
yeah.
So that's only 20 years away. You
So
think
yeah,
about it.
yeah, less than 20 years away. Yeah,
Wait, so the baseline on this
yeah.
graph is 1970 to 2015.
No, it's the linear
That
fit line. You can see it on there. You see that, yeah, that red
so
line that
what's the
starts in
baseline?
1970, goes through 20.
What's the
The
baseline for this
baseline
graph?
looks like the baseline looks like
Wait,
zero looks like it's around 1880 to 1920 or so. You know that zero is right there. You could put a line right there, and it would be hanging around zero in that early part
yeah.
of the graph.
Yeah, but that doesn't
So
say like the temperature baseline. So I mean, if these anomalies.
I don't know.
Well, they're just starting this graph at zero around 1880 to say, okay, at 1880, we're going to have
Yeah,
zero. And then we're just going to
yeah,
map the, you know,
No, I understand that. The
12
reason why
month.
I'm asking is because here Hansen is saying sometime around 2040, we're going to be at 2 degrees Celsius above whatever the baseline is. But if the baseline, for example, is 1880, then that means that 2.4 degrees, or we'll say
Is
if that baseline, for example, a common one I see is like 1985 to 2005. If that's the baseline, then 2.4 is almost 3 degrees by 2040.
yeah.
Um,
I
so
think
that's
it's
why I'm trying to figure
probably.
out what the baseline is that he's using
I
because
mean,
that 2.4 might
well,
not actually be 2.4.
yeah. I can look. I can look at his site and see if I can find it real quick. But yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's
a good
scary either
question.
way. I mean, 2.4 is really high, but especially if the baseline is earlier, then that means that 2.4 actually represents a higher degree integral than if it was from a baseline from, let's say, 1880 to 1920.
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter. I think it's 1880 to 1920, but I can check and see if I can find it real quick. So it's a good
yeah.
question.
Yeah, well, they do keep moving it, as Nadia is saying, the 1750 baseline is a good chunk higher. So, you could always make it look better if you start the data only at 1880. But I guess the whole point is this: we're in the yellow cone, and we're headed for this accelerated warming yellow cone, not the green line. The green dash line, because that was like the original thought was we would be on this green
Yeah,
dash line, but no, no, no,
yeah,
no. We are in the yellow
hmm
cone, which
yeah.
is bad.
Antonio, I just looked it up. It's 1880 to 1920.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
baseline. Yeah. hmm Okay. And
What's
that
this?
is, yeah, sea surface temperature. Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Hot.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hot.
I mean, just look how much it deviates compared to the other years. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
ridiculous. I've never
We're in a
seen
different
anything
world.
quite like that before. Yeah.
No, well, probably hasn't been because we're heading into the sixth grade extinction event 1,000 times faster than happened in the Permian. The Permian took a million years or more to set in. We're doing this in the course of a couple of human lifetimes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, not good. Not good. That thing is taking off. What else have we got, Sandy? Oh, that's
Oh
the
wow,
sea
Mediterranean
temperature around the Mediterranean. Look at that. Look at that. Like, yeah, in the Mediterranean, it's like a bath. Around
The chart
North
tops out at
Africa.
what, 25 degrees Celsius?
or
Is
five
that is that
five
is that
degrees
what that says?
Celsius. It's yeah. Plus, it's greater than or equal to 5 degrees C.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Wow, that's
Well,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you're just cooking in those waters. It's a hot
yeah.
tub.
Uh,
Those are hot tub waters.
daily 2 meter air temperature. Okay, so I guess the whole point of this is that we are the black line and that we are
Hmm.
way out of the norm. We're we're kind of flickering into a new level. It's sampling these higher levels before it like transitions into something else. That's
Jesus.
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. Oh dear. And Spain, big heat dome in Spain, and then also that's where that abrupt, that big flood event that we saw earlier today. Ugh,
Hmm.
very sad,
Well,
very
see,
sad.
that's exactly what I was talking about, is that at one moment you're getting these extreme heats that are just sucking the moisture out of the ground, and then the next moment you're
Hmm.
having a river fall from the sky.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yep. Let's see, and that is what is that? That is 2023 versus Nino peak years. So I think that's
All right, so
is
they're
that
using
temperatures?
two other
Yeah.
El Nino years. The blue is 98, the green is 2016, the last super El Nino, and we're the red. And it looks like now we're into new
Oh, those
territory.
might be okay. I think those might be. I can't remember what those temperatures are. If it's sea surface temperatures for the tropical Pacific region, like the long term temperatures, or that's something else. I don't know what
Oh,
that
okay.
is. Yeah, yeah, I'm not
Okay.
sure. Yeah, so I won't confirm that.
Oh, poor Texas. Look at that.
Oh
Texas has been
yeah, yeah. This
roasting, absolutely roasting.
yeah, yeah. We could actually talk about that because they're having
Please.
like an incredible heat wave in Phoenix in the Southwest U.S. right now. They're having it's supposed to peak tomorrow and Sunday across Southern California, interior Southern California, Arizona, Las Vegas. Las Vegas could set its all-time record high this weekend. I think their all-time record high is like 117, and they could hit like 117 or 118 this weekend. And then Phoenix might near 120, and then Death Valley might get close to 130, 131 degrees. So I mean, they're talking like some ridiculous heat this weekend in the Southwest, and I know Phoenix is particularly bad because it's not only climate change; it's the urban heat island effect. They've had such big urban growth there that it's not cooling off at night, so they're getting all these consecutive days above 110 every single day for days now. But they're also getting nighttime lows over 90 degrees at night, so it doesn't cool off at night. Like the low last
Mm.
night was 93, and it got
Oh
to
my
like
God.
114 or 115 today, and it probably won't cool below 90 tonight either. So I mean, it's um, it's a
Oh, you
dry
can't.
heat, but
Yeah, it's a dry
but
heat. No
it's
problem. No problem. I mean, if you don't have air conditioning, I don't think you can live there, period.
no. And I
No.
mean, the biggest, my biggest fear for the well, I mean, the future's now. I was going to say the future, but it could happen this weekend. Is a blackout where you have so many people running air conditioners and powering their homes that it just overwhelms the system, and you get a blackout. And what are people going to do without air conditioning in that region? I mean, it's unlivable place to live for humans without like
Hmm.
for a significant number of humans. I mean, there's always the exception to the rule in terms of hardiness of a human being, but the majority of humans would just suffer heat exhaustion, heat stroke in that kind of environment because they just can't cool off without air conditioning.
And that's the
Um,
warning, Nick. I think what you're saying here is a point that we need to drive home. I mean, I'm just speaking, I guess, from my own experience.
yeah,
I was in a situation where, I could go back to my room and get air conditioning. Okay. But as noted, it would have only taken at most 3 days for me to succumb to the heat. And like Nick was saying, with those type of nighttime temperatures and no ability to keep your body cool, I mean, that is a real concern. I mean, if you can hear us and you're living in those parts of the country right now, you don't understand. Last year, when we had the heat wave in Seattle, we had someone say they were from Seattle. Over 800 Americans died in a single day. And I promise you, every single one of those people did not think that they were going to die the day before.
Oh, and it can
yeah,
happen
Okay.
that
Oh
yeah,
my
quickly.
God.
That's amazing.
yeah. I
And all
mean,
it takes is, like Nick
I
said, if the power goes out, millions of people would be in really the type of trouble they don't understand how close they are.
yeah, yeah. A lot of prisons don't have air conditioning. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I remember in you talk about climate change in Seattle. Actually, as most people, most of you know, I grew up born and raised in Seattle um, since the mid 1980s. Um, the first time that Seattle hit 100 degrees in its history was 1994. And now that record has long since been blown out of the water by the heat wave that happened 2 years ago when it got to 108. But it got to 100 degrees in 1994. I was 10 years old in 1994. And I remember there was no air conditioning. So what we had to do was do things like open up all the windows, put cardboard in the windows to block the sun. So my dad put cardboard to block the morning sun coming um, out of the east window, and then we would move it to the west balcony door to block out the sun in the afternoon. And then in the meantime, we had fans running. I remember my dad like picked me up and put my head in the freezer to
Oh
try to cool off because I was like sweating so bad,
my
and we
gosh.
just drank lots of water. But it was sweltering. I mean, it was sweltering. That's at 100 degrees outdoors in Seattle, but no air conditioning, and it's just this sweltering. I can't imagine it being like 110, 115, and you have no air conditioning. It's a nightmare. And you're right, Antonio. People really don't understand how close they are to being in a hostile environment when you lose the technology.
That's
And I
right.
mean, Phoenix has always been a hot city, but we know that it wasn't as hot 150 years ago as it is now. I mean, it just isn't as hot. I mean, even 50, 60 years ago, when it was a smaller urban footprint and had less of a heat island effect, you weren't getting all of these lows in the 90s at night. They were very rare in Phoenix in the 60s and 70s to get temperatures, minimum temperatures in the 90s. It was the maybe low to mid 80s at night, but not the 90s. I mean, now they're roasting because of urban heat island effect and climate change now, making it so damn hot all the
Mm.
time, day and night.
Now, what about winter in Australia? It's winter
Mm.
and
So
it's
this
It's
hot.
is
warm there
temperature
too. Yeah.
anomaly with in the middle of winter.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Looks like they're getting kind of a heat blast from the southeast and getting a lot of, or from the north. I'm sorry, it's the tropics are to the north, so it's from the north
Mm-hmm.
um, in the southern hemisphere. So yeah, they're getting a lot of heat. Yeah,
Would you guys
yeah,
like to take some questions?
Sure.
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 All right. Hang on, and we will set you up for questions and get this up. Okay. Not this. Nope. 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 Oh, that's Nick's. That. By the way, I just wanted to give you a plug on your Facebook page. There's Nicholas's Facebook page full of information, and don't forget he has a Patreon also. Okay. Questions. Food production. What's the arable land heat?
The arable land heat. Um, you don't want it warmer than 100 degrees. Let's put it that way. And I think that actually the Central California is going to have a heat wave this weekend where they'll have temperatures in excess of 110 in parts of Central California this weekend too. They're part of that big heat dome that's impacting the Southwest. So, and I mean, the plains have been kind of lucky this year. They haven't dealt with the big heat dome that Texas is having. It
Mm-hmm.
hasn't progressed north. It's mostly staying in the forecast for the next several days is showing all this heat staying in the Sun Belt region, basically Southern California, Southwest U.S., Southern Plains, Texas, into the Southeastern U.S. But yeah, eventually you're going to get one of these big heat domes that produce these ridiculously hot temperatures in the plains, and crops are going to suffer. And the crops are already suffering from
Mm-hmm.
drought
Yeah.
in parts of the
And
Kansas and Nebraska right
hailstorms.
now. Yeah,
Hail.
and
I've seen
hailstorm.
the
Yeah,
hail
hail
taking
and
these
wind.
crops out. And in Colorado, I saw it, Jennifer.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And
The wheat
all the
the wheat
storm
is
chasers are there.
decimated, and the hail, like
Mm.
sometimes it's between baseball and softball size. That was in the
Jesus.
news last. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was in
Yeah,
the news last week. Remember, Sandy? We played
Yes.
that newspaper
That
story.
Yes.
will take
Oh
you
my
out.
God.
Um,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it will.
Heck
yeah.
yeah.
Big
Well,
hail.
oh my God.
Big
All right.
hail.
Let's go to the
Yeah.
next question. Andre, get right down to it, Andre. How fucked are we on a scale of 1 to 10? Oh, God, that's a big one. Thanks, Andre. I mean, we don't prognosticate here, right? But I had to show it. All right. Patrick McNulty, which you all know about ocean mechanical thermal energy conversion yet, anyone? Who's going to do it? That's the thing. Who's going to do it, Patrick? We haven't been able to get any political will to do much, except for what? Carbon capture and carbon fees, which
we
aren't
built
Yeah,
working.
electric
I
car
mean,
chargers.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
basically, it's just basically these I don't know these agreements and frameworks and the carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas concentration continues to rise relentlessly. So yeah, you can go back to that other question that asks how fucked we are.
Jeez. If you don't laugh, you
Very,
cry. Yeah, and I do a lot of
very.
that. Warren. Oh, yeah. And then come the hurricanes. Florida's insurance industry is fracturing with providers leaving. Who knows if Citizens Insurance can handle a catastrophic landfall, which is what you guys were talking about earlier. So I just, I
I
had to
mean, I
start
was
that.
looking, and Nick can speak to this. I was looking at on the it's not Venture Sky, Ventusky, on the Ventusky website, and I was just looking at the ocean waters in the Gulf. And I know that storms, hurricanes need waters at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and just the
Mm.
whole swath of the Gulf is sitting at 85, 86, 87, and I'm just like, oh, we get one hurricane with the right ingredients come through, it's going to make history wherever it lands falls.
Yeah, I mean that's what happened in 2005. You had a very very steamy Gulf of Mexico. I don't know if it's as hot as it is now, particularly in South Florida and the Florida Straits, where it's like ridiculously hot, upper 80s to mid 90s. But yeah, I mean though, I mean the that
Oh,
region is primed for a storm to go through it and become extremely powerful. I mean, with the right atmospheric conditions. So yeah, I mean, it's there's just nothing that's preventing it from happening. It's just time, and
and
yeah, I mean, we've already.
Patty's getting rain
Mhm.
again in Vermont. Oh
Oh, is she? Oh
God.
my.
Why,
Yeah, we're
Nick?
getting. Yeah,
Why? Why? Right.
it's raining hard again. Yeah, we're getting smoke. So
Yeah, that I had that
yeah,
picture up earlier.
apocalyptic smoke. Yeah,
Okay.
that picture up there.
Dawn Bledsoe. How high must a vertical peak go to be considered going exponential?
Well, I don't
Oh
think it's the peak that it decides the exponentiality, but the overall trend over time. And if you look at any graph over time that has to do with these things, whether it be population or, CO2 or temperature or sea level rise, they're all having the same thing. And it's this polynomial curved line that it determines the exponentiality over time. So the peak may portend to the possibility of exponentiality, but a single peak won't do it unless you have many peaks over time. That's my answer to it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll move on. Nadia, oh boy. I think Sam Carana is closer to reality than. So, what do you guys think? You think the person behind the curtain of Sam Carana is closer to reality or not?
Tennessee by 2026. Is that what
I
that's
maybe
asking?
it's changed. I don't know. I go on the Facebook
Well,
page and I see
well,
lots of different
I
things.
mean,
That was one
well, I
article.
mean the to to get to get to I mean, I know what's in the equation that Sam Carana is using to say 10C. I mean the stratocumulus feedback, the loss of aerosols, things like that. But um, um, to get to that kind of temperature that fast, I mean, the only thing that I can think of that would be cataclysmic enough to get things really going. I mean, the a sufficient loss of sea ice could raise temperatures non-linearly quickly, potentially. But I mean, it would be like the the catastrophic venting of the methane from the Arctic or something
But
like
see, I
that from
don't
the
even know
Arctic.
about that
But
because people,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
push back a lot on this, and I think our paleo history is our only guide. So,
hmm
the last time that the Earth went through a super global warming episode was during the PETM, the Paleocene Eocene Thermo Maximum. And that
right,
was an
right.
episode of 200,000 years with an injection period of 10,000 to 22,000 years. And during that 10,000 to 22,000 year ejection period, we saw maximum injections, zero point 0.5 to 1 ppm a year. So 10 degrees C in 3 years from now on the global average would be the equivalent of like two Himalaya sized asteroids hitting the planet. Um,
You
so I don't think anything like that's going to happen.
So
The
maybe
the
not.
Yeah, the formula that Sam Carana gives is the right ingredients for that temperature, but not the right time range. Because of
Hmm.
course,
yeah. I
because that's
mean,
just not how physics on a planet like Earth would
Yeah.
work.
It's always
yeah.
seemed
I mean,
very
we're
aggressive to me. Like I think he's
yeah,
going in the right direction, but I think the time frame is too compressed.
yeah. I
I
Like
mean,
mean, that's
we're
I
3 years.
mean, I, I mean, I like to tell people we're already. I mean, climate change is abrupt. What does abrupt mean? People, argue these timeline things, and it drives me, batshit crazy. I just have to say, it drives me crazy because, like, I mean, uh, we're doing 10,000 years of change. If you track interglacial periods where you came out of glaciation and stuff, and you had 3, 4 C rise in global average temperature over maybe 10,000 years, we're compressing 10,000 years of history already into a century or less. I think that alone would classify as abrupt. Now, can things potentially go
yeah, I
faster
think
than that?
we're there.
Could we see 3 or 4 C by 2050 or something because of feedback loops that we don't understand? I could see that happening, but I can't see 10 C in 3 years. That's just way.
I don't think
It's too
3 years.
fast. It's just too
It
fast.
is.
I mean, the oceans take time to heat up because they have a high heat capacity. And then the atmosphere takes time to respond to that. I mean, it's just there's things. Yeah, as this person says, in fairness, we've already compressed the timeline way beyond anything natural. That's what we've done, but it's just too fast for me to see that happening. But I could see. I mean, 3 C by 2050 doesn't seem completely out of the realm of possibility because of the fact that we know that the climate models can't account for all the feedbacks necessarily very effectively, and that's just the nature of them and their resolution and things like that. Um, but yeah, 10C by 2026, I don't see that happening at all.
I agree.
Okay.
Not.
All righty. Well, hi, Hans. He said it was raining hot cats and dogs, by the way, where he is in Sweden, I think he is. All right. So,
No, he's in
Donald.
the
Oh, in the
Netherlands.
Netherlands? He's in the Netherlands? Okay. Donald, will the rich outsurvive us with their access to resources? And is that why they are never concerned about the climate disaster? If so, what do we do about it?
Well, I'll just be really quick to answer that question. The answer is yes, and then the other answer that follows that is it doesn't matter because, as I stated before, the climate isn't going to be changing for 10 years or 20 years. The climate is going to be changing, and by the way, when I say changing, getting worse for the next several hundred thousand
Ever.
years. And then once the climate stops changing, it's going to be in a new state for hundreds of thousands of years after that. So again, they are going to survive longer, and it doesn't matter.
Okay. Let's see. How will Antarctic sea ice loss affect ocean currents?
I was thinking that same thing, and I wanted to ask you guys, do you know? Because the Antarctic sea ice is getting smaller and smaller. What is that going to do to the ocean circulation around the global ocean that goes around Antarctica? Do you
We
know
got to
what's
That's
get
going to do
Jim
to
that
back.
it?
might be more of a Jim
Yeah.
Massa question because I'm not
Yeah.
sure actually. I mean, I've heard of like the melting of the actual glaciers from Antarctica having effects on the ocean currents, similar to what's going on with Greenland ice sheet and the North Atlantic current. But I don't really know what sea ice loss would do. So that's a good question, actually.
The one thing
Hmm.
I'll say that I'll contribute here, I don't know what it will do to currents, but one thing I will say is that this is a negative feedback. That the rapid deglaciation of Antarctica will actually act as a stopgap for the runaway climate. because so much ice will deglaciate, and kind of like what we're seeing in the earlier map, we can already see it has some ameliorating cooling effect, but when you rapidly deglaciate Antarctica and that water starts to mix in with the warmer waters in the world, it's going to drastically bring global warming to a halt. But that's not any reprieve to us. This would be sometime, I would imagine, into the 23rd or 24th century. And then also the sort of climate shock the planet will be in from that would be probably just as devastating as a runaway warming session. So it's not that that would be any
Yeah.
help, but that's one reason why global average temperature may not peak at 10 degree or 16 degrees Celsius, is because there would be a period of this cooling. Now, what would happen after that cooling satiates, that's anyone's guess.
Yeah, and I think Hansen's paper in the mid, he wrote a paper in the mid 2010s about sea level rise and superstorms. I think he called it. He talked about exponential sea level rise coming from Greenland and Antarctica, and actually keeping the global average temperature from skyrocketing after a certain period of time. Um, yeah, but again, you'd have these wild oscillations over a course of a century or two between it rising catastrophically fast, which it's doing now, 3, 4 C or greater rise within a century, to dropping back down. It's just like ridiculous temperature shifts on a global scale that would be devastating to the biosphere. So, yeah.
Okay. Japan put a white blanket on a glacier. Can those kinds of things actually work?
No, I think, I mean, if you need to get the albedo up and keep the temperature of that glacier stable, I've heard that you can actually put blankets all over your glaciers. That's going to be a lot of blankets.
And made out of what?
I don't know, but they
Oil?
have to be white.
Yeah. Oil, Vaseline. Yeah.
I don't know. The
I
whole
don't
thing
know
is
either.
crazy. When you talk about putting blankets all over your glaciers, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I
bad.
know. I know.
Things are bad when you're putting blankets on glaciers.
Well,
So,
Nick,
yeah.
you don't tuck your glaciers in to go to
At night,
sleep.
you know, tuck them in at night. Oh, jeez. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, well, Scott's got a comment, and I lost it. Shit. Sorry, Scott. It was, well, if there has to be a tornado, please let it hit DC. And I lost it. It was from a while back. Okay, I won't lose this one. Is anyone here doing any rooftop mirror, reflector trials, apparatus, etc., testing those surface temps and differences? Thanks. Well, I can answer as far as trying to answer that question with Dr. Yi Tao, but it won't be until the fall because of his research work. So we'll ask him that. But anybody else?
No, I don't
Nick?
know anything
No.
about it. I've
No.
heard of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Mirrors is the Mirror Project, and we had Ilona Upit who came on and talked about that with us. So you can watch the video with her, but we will be getting him on. Everybody's waiting. Everybody wants to be on in the fall. All right. So let's see if there's any more questions. I think we are finished with questions. So the last one, and this goes back, and Jennifer, you'll get it. You'll get this. It's from our Kimmy. So what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, you're aware of it. Now fix it.
Yeah. Well, what are we going to do about it? Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kim. That was perfect for that time. All right. Well,
So I can't just like sit in back and watch the planet burn. That's not.
well, you're not going to. You're
Nick,
not
you're the
going
one
to.
who actually is doing something about it.
Yeah.
Hats off to
You're
you.
completely doing something about it, and a lot more than than we are. but
You are.
and we try. I mean, we try our best, and we do what we can do. We put on the show. I put on the show, but Nicholas, you're out there, and you're going to be on the front lines, babe. Front lines.
Yeah, your turn, buddy. I was up during the pandemic. You can take climate change.
Goodness.
Anybody else want to run off to the wilderness, living in a shack and taking mushrooms all day? Okay, well, I ran off and I live behind my gate and I never go out. Oh my God. Oh, you're welcome, sweetie pie. We love you. We love you and thank you. Thank you. Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to let you take up the helm at the end, and I'm going to say good night. I love you guys, and the three of you can do your thing.
Yeah, well, I always love coming on State of the Planet with you guys. It is always such an enlightening and somewhat entertaining conversation, but I'm happy that we got the chance to do this together today. I do feel that things are really, really accelerating and that every day is precious. So, love you both.
Yeah, love you too. I mean, it's definitely takes my breath away to watch what's happening to the planet. I mean, it's every day now is something going on in the news. It used to be that way 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. It wasn't like this, but now it's every single day. You're fully either fully aware of what's happening or you're asleep at the wheel. I mean, there's a lot of people that are asleep. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I'm at least hopeful. If I got any hope, it's hopeful people will wake up and at least act in good grace to the planet. But I don't know if that's going to happen. So that's all I got to say.
Good night,
I'll
everyone.
just be really
Oh,
short, I guess. I'm just glad that I'm here with you guys. I mean, I know this is the best of times or worst of times, but I'm just glad to be here with you guys.
I'm glad you're here too, Antonio. And I'd like to thank Sandy because really, guys, you know it, I know it. Without Sandy, none of this and this whole community would not exist. So, for her genius, for her good taste in music, for all the things she does, and for her unending love, thank you, Sandy. We appreciate you so much.
I love you guys too.